Hi, another film I watched last weekend was Paranormal Activity Next of Kin, the seventh and most recent film in the Paranormal Activity series of found footage horror movies. Previous films have been about people investigating strange hauntings within their homes and discovering it's the work of some kind of demon connected to a cult, with the previous films all loosely strung together into an overall narrative. Next of Kin, which is the first film in 6 years, is instead a rough reboot of the series and follows a young woman who discovers that, having been adopted from a hospital when she was a baby, that she is in fact related to an Amish group in Pennsylvania. So she, her boyfriend, and a rather wacky sound man travel there to meet her real family and interview them. However, while they're there, they've become aware of some strange goings on within the Amish group, discover that they are in fact not Amish at all, and that, cut off from civilization, something darker and stranger is afoot. It has an interesting pedigree. It's directed by William Eubank, who has worked on, started out in very low budget films, a science fiction drama called Love, which was made largely in his parents' backyard, even scenes on board spaceships and war battlefields, and then followed that up with a not terribly original but surprisingly ambitious science fiction story called The Signal. Then his big studio debut was Underwater, a Lovecraftian aliens type movie, which had the misfortune of being released only a few weeks before the COVID lockdown, so it suffered very badly at the box office. And this is his follow up. It's also written by Christopher Landon, who's written most of the previous films in the series and also started to strike out as a director on his own. However, I found it to be generally rather weak. It's effectively a reboot of the series because, in terms of continuity, it can't match up with any of the previous films. But it lacks anything terribly interesting or original. The scares are very rote and unimpressive. Um, there's there's very little of any originality here. It all feels recycled and mechanically recovered and very flat and unengaging. It's also surprisingly long. It's a very long time until any of the horror elements of the story start kicking in, um, seemingly to ground the characters or set up the atmosphere, but there's so little atmosphere generated that it seems like a very half hearted exercise. It's really an odd film. It has a very strange, inconclusive ending, which doesn't really work. And I found it to be very disappointing and quite badly put together. I mean, I'm fairly confident that Eubank is better than this. He seems to be quite happy churning out studio crap now, rather than any of the more esoteric independent films he started out with, like, as I say, Love and The Signal, both of which I would recommend as purely as curiosity elements, if for no other reason. But the Paranormal Activity movies started so well. The first film was, of course, a huge hit. I managed to see it on opening night in a packed cinema, and it was a traumatic experience all round. But the lack of innovation in the series over the subsequent movies has meant that they've just run out of steam. There's very little to them beyond the essential concept in the original movie, and this film confirms that there's very little more that they can actually do.